Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Yeah, we seem to have critical mass. So let's go ahead. Hi, Tahina, how are you?
Hi, nice to meet you all.
Certainly, your audio is muted. You're certainly welcome to leave your video on if you like. Either way. So, welcome to the last CBOR call before the IETF meeting. The primary goal here is going to be to wrap up what we can wrap up and get an agenda ready for the Madrid session so that we know what we're spending that time on. Karsten, you proposed some slides. I approved them. Why don't you hit the slides? And I presume that's going to be the first, the document status and where we are in resolving those.
Yeah, I don't actually have a document status. I'm just focusing on the 3 documents that were on the agenda. So let me bring this up. Okay, so we had EDN Literal, PACT, and CDE on the agenda. I turned this around a little bit in the hope that we can do PACT in like 5 minutes, but maybe we can't. So in that case, we probably have to leave enough time for CDE. So should I jump into the first item?
Yes, go on ahead and yeah.
Okay. So EDN Literals is available in a version -18. For all these 3 documents, I have done kind of last minute or last day submissions that are not necessarily perfectly agreed in every detail yet, and I apologize if that is not what you're expecting this working group to do. But this one actually really just has corrections for -17, so there should be no technical changes. And it seems to me we have essentially one item that is still under discussion, and this is the whole application oriented extension string escaping approach. And we had a discussion about implementability of reasonable error messages. I have a slide on that, but I think my personal view on this is that we have a way forward for that. So I think we should focus on having a general look at the application string approach again, now that we have solved this technical issue with one approach. Joe?
Yeah, I still don't agree that the thing that you posted yesterday or whatever is a solution. I still think it's overly complicated, just so you know we're not yet aligned. I still think that the question that's outstanding for me of can we justify this hasn't been answered.
Right. So I just try to get the issue out of the way, how to implement it once we decide to do it this way. And I think we have an answer for that, but we still have to have the discussion, as you said. Let's talk about this app string escaping thing. And I think one aspect that came up in the discussion is, do we actually have to help the various application extension formats that we might want to support in extensions for EDN, using EDN's extensibility? Can we expect those to handle all the escaping things? And I brought up one example, and yeah, maybe the fact that example doesn't work is a bug in that example and not something that we have to discuss here. So let me just get back to an example that we all probably should understand well, which is an application extension that requires a URI as a app string. And the question is, how do we handle the problem that this abstring may not fit into the syntax of a string that EDN provides? And the upper example, the CRI quote something code is an example of how this would work in general in what is currently written up in the draft. And one question was, can't we have the application extension handle the unescaping? So in this particular case, you would expect to do something like percent encoding to no longer need that backslash combination in the string. And I think we haven't really discussed in detail how that exactly is going to work, but my assumption would be that we continue scanning for backslash something and hand these to the application extension as we find them, but we don't terminate the string when we see a backslash quote. We only terminate it when there is actually an isolated quote. So that's my working assumption, but of course we can change that as well. So that I think is the background. And the question is, can we maybe do all of the unescaping in the application extension? Well, you certainly can implement it this way. That's what the integrated parsers actually do. So that's not the question, but the question is, can we use this as a feature of the application extension syntax? So on this slide, on the left side, there is a hypothetical application extension regular expression that probably doesn't make sense, but because you all know what regular expressions are, I chose that anyway. With unescaping in the application extension, we wouldn't have problems if the syntax for the abstring that is in this application extension actually uses backslash combinations that don't mean anything in EDN. So we could have, okay, thank you. We could have something like a word regular expression that has a sequence of 0 more hyphens, letters, and digits. So just as a reminder, in the existing syntax, you would have to escape all those backslashes because, there is no definition for backslash W in EDN. Joe?
Oh, I think I do agree with it now that you explained a little bit more. So what you're saying is that if we did the thing on the previous slide, we could have the thing on the left instead of the thing on the right.
Yes.
Then I agree with you, and that's a feature of the thing on the previous slide.
Good.
So the assumption here is that the application extension syntaxes all can handle their own escaping. And I brought up 9485 as a counterexample, and that's maybe a bug in 9485. We can discuss that elsewhere. Another example is the URI syntax that I had on my slide. And I led you a little bit into a dark corner here because %27 is not the same as a single quote. Because it's a subdelimiter, so it doesn't normalize to a single quote. It actually is a different UI than the one that was created using the backslash notation. So I'm not saying that this isn't solvable. This is just an example for complexity this generates in the application extension, because you now have to think about these things. And essentially, we are handing the fact that we have to backslash escape single quotes through to the extension point and let the extension point, the person who does the extension, deal with it. There's also an interesting question of how we actually mix this. So what happens if a regular expression, for instance, actually does contain a single quote? I think these are all solvable, but they are additional complexities that we have to work with. And Vadim points out we could do completely different syntax. I have a slide for that later, but Rohan is in the queue.
So in the previous slide, the regex example, I mean, that's assuming that that would be a useful, that you could turn either of those into some useful CBOR. Again, you know, like, I think we've gotten close to some things that I think are possibly compelling, but I don't think that raw, you know, example shows something that we could turn into reasonable CBOR in an interoperable way.
Okay, that's the problem with the choice of my example, that it requires some work to actually generate CBOR, and I just assumed that we're going to do this work, and I just wanted to point out that we can have escape processing.
If I think we want to show we can do, we want to do things that will actually turn into real CBOR, you know, that a lot of, you know, we think lots of people might turn into CBOR.
Yeah, give me 2 more hours of time and I come up with a better example, but that's the example we have to live with at the moment. And the point is that not having to double all or your backslashes in a string is a good thing. And both Vadim and Joe point out, oh, we could have something like a raw string. And I think that's really an interesting other way of handling this. So that might be something we choose to do if we actually cannot decide one of the 2 approaches that I'm going to talk about is going to be the one that suffices. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that this approach here does throw some problems over the wall into the extension definition. And yeah, we would have to remind extension providers to get these things right, and they won't. So just as somebody who has a little bit of experience with it, extensibility, I think we would create a problem here. The approach that is currently in the document is that we do one level of unescaping in the base syntax. And if the application extension syntax has something like +27, it can have that too. So this is layered on top of each other. And that's why we talk about layer 1 and layer 2 in the discussion, also in the implementation discussion. Yeah, but in any case, the assumption is that the application extension really is in control of the syntax, and it may not actually be doing the parsing of that syntax in an ABNF-based way. There may be a library that is getting used and so on. So we cannot really assume that the application extension neatly finds into the existing implementation of EDN. So one of the nice things of separating this, or the providing isolation, is I would say, is that an EDN generator might be able to produce an ASCII printable form of EDN without understanding all app extensions and their escaping syntaxes. So I think this is an extremely valuable property of JSON that we want to preserve here. And of course, from different perspectives, this is different levels of interest, because you may be in a completely Unicode compatible environment and you don't care about this. But there are lots of operational environments where it's actually useful to be able to put some ASCII. One?
Yeah, so I agree that there are lots of environments that don't do full Unicode. I just don't agree that there are lots of them that would be going and deploying a new protocol, that would be deploying EDN, that would be deploying a new syntax of EDN.
You can do that, but I think it's much better to have this as an intrinsic property of the representation form.
I don't. I think that all new protocols in IETF should be Unicode, should be assuming that we need Unicode.
Yes, I completely agree. That doesn't change the operational reality that the ability to have an ASCII printable form of something is extremely useful.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree on that.
Yeah. Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to point out the thing I just said in the chat here, which is that JSON.stringify does not escape Unicode.
Yeah, and that's certainly fine. You don't have to generate all your JSON with.
If your argument is that JSON does this,
yes,
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
That's very popular, and it doesn't do this. So
something that is if I've got an in-memory representation and I turn it into JSON, I don't get Unicode escapes. I get Unicode.
Yeah, for that implementation. It's possible
for the one
to
that's
create
used by 95% of the times that people present. It's the most important implementation.
Yes,
and I would argue that a lot of other implementations follow its lead in doing this, because escaping all Unicode is unnecessary.
Yeah, we really have different perspectives here. And yes, I mean, it helps that the ECMAScript is really pushing Unicode through in many places. So I think that's a great, it really helps moving things forward. I'm just saying it's still something that is a useful property of a representation format.
Oh, I agree. I agree that it's useful to have that format. I disagree that we need to be able to generate the ASCII escape format from a general purpose tool.
Okay, yeah, I'm not trying to debate this. I just think it's a good property of the format to enable that. And it's not a requirement we put on tools. There is a short set of paragraphs about tools at the beginning of the document that discusses this a little bit. I think it's something I really think is useful, and we have different perspectives on this. Okay, so that's I think the situation. I mentioned that there is this implementation that you still find ugly, Joe. It's on the right side of the slide. So it's not something that would make me really unhappy if I had this in my code. So I happen to have a parser library that does that work for me already, but yeah, it's not something that makes it impossible to, or that keeps it impossible to level shift layer 2 syntax error positions into layer 1 ones. Right. So I think Joe has an important point here that we have to talk about requirements. And I don't like talking about requirements because requirements lead to requirements engineering, which is a pejorative word, but we should discuss objectives. And for me, it's a significant objective to be able to do ASCII printable representation of human readable presentation format. Yeah, so just as a reminder, we have created space for integrated parsers. So if you don't want to do this in 2 steps by using L1 parsing and L2 parsing, we have text on how to do integrated parsers, and we have restricted the amount of escaping that is possible in single quoted strings, so less escaping of ASCII needs to be handled. You still have to handle the back quote and the quote and the backslash. We have these ABNF bricklets, which you can use to construct integrated ABNF, and we provide example ABNF for H and B64. So from an implementation point of view, I think we are covered. We discussed this the last time, so I don't want to repeat this discussion. But this is really, for me, currently more a matter of what can we actually do with EDN. So can we create syntaxes for app strings that are not valid single quoted strings? And Joe, can you say what you implemented from -17?
So I tried to implement it both ways. I tried to implement it with the single pass parser and the double pass parser, and both ways made extensions complicated. I wanted to preserve the ability to add new extensions in easily, and the way that I had it working with 16, I just barely got it to work. Modulo the problem of getting the error messages correct, I got it to work, but with 17, I got stuck.
Okay, so what was the
it's
change?
Been several weeks. I don't remember exactly where I got stuck.
Oh,
but
okay.
I got stuck and I just stopped. So take that as a data point that's not useful without me telling you exactly where I got stopped. I can go back and figure that out if I need to.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. And now back to what both Vadim and Joe have said. Do we actually have to funnel everything into this single string syntax? Well, we have 2 variants of the JSON string syntax, the double quoted one, and the single quoted one, which we use for normally use for byte strings, and that we have kind of shoehorned into this situation. And one observation is that many programming languages have some form of raw strings. And of course, it's a matter of design to get the raw strings right. But we certainly would be able to define a form of raw strings that actually works for this and allows you to have those regular expressions without double escapes and so on. So that's one question that I think we should be talking about.
Hello. Okay, so if we assume that we want to be able to do, something like this, I think we've got two examples. We could have pick a fixed number of, say, angle brackets to start your app sequence. And then we can have a CBOR sequence on the inside. But then the CBOR sequence itself, we need to be careful that, then we need to parse the individual parts of the CBOR sequence, which themselves can contain that number of angle brackets, of closing angle brackets.
Well, the angle brackets really is a slight diversion here, because that's doing something different in the current document. And I would really like to focus on the strings. So if you want to have \w, you have to have something that supports raw strings. And
I'm sorry, I didn't parse that.
If you want to allow writing an application extension that allows you to write down \w.
Sorry,
you have to have a raw string
allows you
mechanism.
to write down.
\w.
Yes.
You need some form of raw string syntax. So
So you can't have a CBOR sequence, or sorry.
CBOR sequence is not helping.
A CBOR sequence or not? That's my question.
That's a completely different subject.
Well, that's my question, because I'm trying to understand what the requirements are for this extension mechanism that you're proposing, or that, you know, like there's broad interest here, but let's try to tackle some requirements questions. And I think figuring out whether we want the thing to include CBOR sequences or not, I think that's an important question.
Yeah, but again, that's unrelated. So Joe would like to have a try on explaining this.
Vadim's in the queue before me. Vadim, do you want to go ahead before I try and explain?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think that the issue discussed previous time about like SQL example could be solved by exactly this raw strings syntax. The whole point of the previous examples discussion was to have less escaping. So I think that the one solution could be for both requirements.
All right, so I agree with that. Let me see if I can explain. I'm going to posit a syntax here, not that I suggest that this is the actual syntax that we choose, but so that we have something concrete to consider. If these kinds of strings started with some number of backticks, so one or more backticks, and then were terminated by the same number of backticks they started with. Yeah, so use backtick instead of angle brackets there, Rowan, and it won't get into the same question of do we want to use less thans and greater thans for something else. So let's just use backtick for the sake of argument for the moment. And those will look familiar to folks who have done Markdown. So then when I put a single quote inside of those backticks, it's fine. I don't have to escape it. When I put a backtick inside of those single quotes, as long as it's not the first character in the string, then it's fine. Well, let me rephrase. If I use two backticks at the beginning, and then a new line, for instance, and then somewhere inside the running text I have a backtick, then at some point following I have two backticks, then I don't need to escape the one backtick that's in the middle, etc. for as many backticks as I need to not have to escape. So if I wanted to include 3 backticks in my string, I put 4 at the beginning and I have 4 at the bottom. And again, you can't have one at the beginning or at the end. So you use usually these formats. For these kinds of things, you're gonna have new lines in there anyway, and so you use a new line before the delimiter, and it all just works. That does require being able to look ahead several characters in your parser to tell if this is only one backtick or is it the delimiter, and that's difficult to specify in ABNF. So that's going to be a little tough for us. Most parser generator libraries do have something that will allow you to do this kind of look ahead. So implementation isn't going to be quite as hard as the specification. Carsten, does that all make sense to you, what I said?
That makes a lot of sense. I was not trying to design this on the fly here, but what you describe is certainly an avenue that leads to a design.
I'm just trying to describe an existence proof that this kind of thing could work. I think it would solve Vadim's issue of wanting to inject SQL into here, because now I don't have to escape anything. Any backslashes are passed through as is, and you don't need to have any escaping syntax for this format at this level.
So
Well, I'm
the
not inclined
disadvantage.
to any concrete syntax, just the final goal. Well, be that 4 or 5 angle brackets, be that 4 or 5 backticks, do whatever best is for parsers and ABNF. Just the final goal matters to have as minimum escaping as possible to easily pass to application the most raw string.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out that like it's not just the definition of the app sequence that is tricky there. It's the definition of I mean, you basically need to say then that the definition of a CBOR sequence or a quoted string inside of a CBOR sequence can no longer contain that number of backticks or and closing angle brackets or whatever delimiter it is.
We're using a different delimiter for CBOR sequence, so that's not something
I'm
that
sorry.
hits
So
us.
a CBOR sequence can contain single quoted strings, right?
Yes.
Can a single quoted string contain one of those delimiters?
Yes, but they are not starting a CBOR sequence.
No, but if I have a single quoted string, can I have a single quoted string that has, if I started with 6 backticks, can I have a single quoted string which contains 6 backticks?
Can somebody else answer the question, because I don't get it?
Yeah. So the proposal would be that this is separate from angle brackets. So if we still wanted to have angle brackets as a way of starting a CBOR sequence that then got passed through some function to turn into CBOR, then you could have a backtick quoted string as one of those things in the sequence, or you could have a single quoted string inside that sequence, and both would retain their meanings as outside of the angle brackets.
So in other words, the single quoted string could contain as many backticks as you wanted, and it still would not count as closing the backtick.
No, not quite.
Okay.
So yes, and so yes, a single quoted string could contain as many backticks as you wanted, and they wouldn't impact parsing of any other backtick quoted strings. But single quoted strings would not be special inside of backticks. So you don't. It's not. So single quotes are not EDN syntax inside of backticks. They're string syntax.
Okay, I think I got you.
All right. And this is one of those things with a couple of examples, I think it would be very easy to see.
Yeah, it's hard to do this on the Meet Echo chat.
Absolutely.
I tried to open the Zulip chat, but that URL seems to be down or missing or something.
Okay. So I'm happy to write text. I think I see this. I'm happy to write some text for the list to help move the discussion forward.
Great, thank you.
So
Go
ahead, Carson.
My summary of this segment, I really want to get to the other 2 items, is we examine raw strings, come up with a proposal, and then see how the whole thing fits together. We have this disagreement about the objectives of this whole thing, which may become less important if we have a good technical solution that actually fulfills this objective without hurting too much.
Okay, so yeah, so as I said, I think I saw some examples that seem compelling enough, or that are starting to become compelling enough for this. I would really urge people to try to come up with concrete uses where, like, it's easy to imagine you could turn this EDN into CBOR. And that have these non-trivial, non-trivial interactions with other parts of EDN, particularly comments and single quoted strings. I don't think that we have had, I don't think that we've had that. And we've been working on implicit requirements instead of explicit requirements, which makes it all the more difficult to come to consensus, because if we don't agree on what we're trying to accomplish, then we're sure as heck not going to agree on how we do it.
Yes. So, Barry, do you want to close the queue on this agenda item?
Barry needed to find his mute button. Yes, yeah, that's a good idea. We really need to get to the agenda bits. So let's wrap up whatever we want to talk about with the documents and move on. So this is clearly still going to be discussed on the list between now and the meeting, and probably will be on the agenda from the.
I certainly want to have this running on the hackathon, so
Yeah.
we should use the next 10 days to actually get something that can be implemented.
Yes.
Okay. I move on to the next item, which is the CBOR Pact discussion. Again, I would like to keep this really short if we can. Just as a reminder, we have essentially two questions open. One is the selection of the tunables A, B, and C. A lot has happened in the background. I don't really know how much of this actually surfaced on the mailing list. But I'm feeling much better with 12.8.8 at this point than when I started proposing that as a possible way forward. So I think we never will get mathematically uncontrovertible proof that this is a good set of choices, because it's all about optimization, not about correctness. But it seems to me we should be able to agree on that. And the other observation was that the large consumption of simple values probably can be best agreed on if we also agree on having a little bit more of functionality attached to them. So integration tags came up, which also solve complexity in the DNS CBOR proposal. The current document, the -16, has an example tag, the 115 splicing tag. Yeah, I think we should have a brief discussion what we are going to do with these two things. So just as a reminder, before the most recent version of the document, the only thing you could do with a shared item is reference this, and the shared item just went into place. That was all that was possible. That means it's way less powerful, but it's also way easier to implement than other parts of the pact specification. And if an application protocol decides to use just that part of pact, and the pact is a set of tags, so you get free choice what you want to actually use, then this is also going to be very, very simple. And integration tags give shared item reference a little bit more power by actually allowing that integration tag to the reference that references the integration tag to mess around with its context. So for instance, if you have a rump that has a shared item reference to shared item 0, and the shared item 0 says, I have integration tag 1115, and here's an array. This means that in the integration of that shared item, which is no longer just a simple substitution, we can do splicing. And I think this is technically sound. We, of course, introduce another piece of complexity. So we should not do this lightly. And well, one side effect of integration tags is that it actually becomes much more reasonable to actually go for 16 simple values, because we can give them much more complicated jobs than just simple substitution. So that's the one thing I would like to hear response to. I also would like to remind people that we still have 3 open issues, which are minor issues, but we have to solve them. So Christian noticed that we really have a problem with the way we handle errors, because 2 errors look alike, and that means that 2 data structures look alike, even though the thing that errored out may be different. We have questions on handling implementation disagreements on media types. So for instance, one system might not know the media type, the other one might know it, and do we have problems with that? We have to examine that. And also, maybe we need some guide rails on what table setup tags can do. That's 23. None of these really need to be done, but I think it would be good if we get the discussion far enough that we can close the issues. So any points about integration tags now? Yes, Nikola's question was, would a potential future integration tag be able to alter the context in a way that not just replaces the symbol itself, but also items next to it? I mean, this is kind of what already happens in splicing, because the array, which in my example had 7 elements, suddenly becomes an array with 9 elements. So the context was changed. But that's exactly the power we want to give integration tags. Okay, and I'm reading Vadim's message as saying that we really should go for 16. And that happens to fit with my intuition, but I don't have a strong opinion on this. Okay. Can we do a last call on 16 plus 8 plus 8?
Well, I wanted in separate RFC to be able to share this between standards, just like as it was done with SSH 2. It has reserved ranges to, for example, different key exchange methods, and some numbers were used between different standard track RFCs. So if the range is shared between could be shared between different standards, then we can use as many simple values as it makes sense. So it could be 16 then.
So the intention is to allow integration tags to do a lot of things. And maybe we can have a look at the text where that the text proposal that is in the current internet draft to check whether that's actually said there, or I just believe it is said there. So that would be a request to look at the text again and see if we can go forward with this. Good. So
we all agree about that integration tags should go, yeah?
Well, Nikolai still has reservations, so I think we should give him some time to write them up on the mailing list. I wouldn't want to nail him down right here. Yeah, it's a conscious decision to do something which is powerful and that can get back and bite us.
But what's the purpose of the not a number reference error tag?
You have to read issue 20. Read issue 20 and it should be clear why the 1112 right now has a problem, and we need to decide whether we want to solve that problem or not. And of course, please read issue 21 and 23 as well. Joe.
So this means they postpone this to mailing list, yeah, for now, as it's little time left for agenda.
Yes, so I wouldn't mind writing this up as a little last call in the working group, whether we want to continue doing this that way, and in parallel we can work on 2021 and 23. Joe, you're in the queue.
Yeah, I just had an evil thought, and I'm going to preface my remarks by saying this is ugly and stupid, but I would just like to put it in the record. You could, for all these tags that you're putting in for doing packed, you could use nan-boxed integers. You could use 2-byte floats that were nan-boxed, and you would get almost everything you want at a lower byte price.
Yeah, B and C are tags, so they have tag content that can be any size.
I get it. I'm just saying, like, it exists in the design space, and it's awful,
Yes.
but it might get you what you want.
Okay.
What are name boxed in integers?
All right, so this is related to the other conversation we're having about CDE with not a number, nan. And so you can put a payload inside of the nan. There you go. Now you get it.
Interesting idea.
Yeah, now you have set this worm into our ears, and we will start thinking about solutions that could use nans.
I don't care about packed at all. I'm not implementing it. I'm trying really hard not to comment on it, but that was an idea that popped into my head.
Thanks. Okay, so maybe we can do the rest of this on the list because we only have 10 minutes left, and I would like to use 5 of those for CDE.
All right, well, let's do the agenda first, and
Okay.
whatever we have left, we can come back to that. So, moving to the agenda, we have 2 items. 2 items that are already on the agenda. Martine wanted 10 minutes to talk about DNS CBOR, and we have Tahina on the call with us right now to expand a little bit on his item, which I've put in for 20 minutes, and we need to figure out whether that's what we want to spend our face-to-face time on, how much of that we want to discuss on the list ahead of time, that sort of thing. So Tahina, do you want to give us a very quick summary of what you're going to be talking about in Madrid?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tahina, and I'm from Microsoft Research in Redmond, USA. And I'd like to present to you with a verified implementation of CBOR and a verified parser and serializer generator from CDDL data format descriptions. We got a paper just accepted at ACM CCS this year. We got the news this early July. And so what I'd like to do, okay, so we can have, as Karsten proposed, and thank you all again, we can have a detailed discussions at the side meeting. That's for sure. And then I would say, since the side meeting is scheduled before the main CBOR meeting, I would say that the presentation I would give at the CBOR meeting would be a summary of what the discussions that we would have had at the that we would have on the side meeting. Because some of the questions I have, I have some questions from I want to present our findings about how we did the proof, what properties we proved, what are the implications on the performance of some validation, data validation steps, especially in terms of stack consumption, memory consumption. And I will have, I hope we can have some discussions about how to author CDDL data format descriptions that for which we can produce a serializer that is unambiguous CDDL data format descriptions.
Okay. My thought on, given that you have the side meeting and that you'll be summarizing the side meeting, my thought is that you should make that fairly brief. So rather than doing a 15-minute presentation, aim to summarize what was discussed at the side meeting in a few minutes and spend the time with us in the working group meeting mostly on discussion of it rather than presenting stuff. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. Yes, I'm fine with that. Thank you. Yes.
And we will hope that we can get most of the people who care about this to be at the side meeting as well. So
yes.
Joe, are you in the queue? Let's see what Joe has.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. It was an old hand. Yeah, go ahead, Tahina.
Yes, because just as an advertisement also, I'll be presenting also at the usable formal methods group. But there I will give a broader talk on the EverParse research project at MSR that includes the verified CBOR and CDDL implementations.
Okay. When is the side meeting? What day and time?
Alors, Karsten scheduled
yeah,
it for Monday evening, I think.
Sorry?
Sorry?
Just repeat. Sorry, I
Monday at 5 p.m.
Okay, Marco says it's Tuesday at 1700 CEST.
Correct.
Sorry, yes, sorry, I got confused. Sorry, it's Tuesday, okay. Yes.
And that conflicts with the DM working group meeting, which some people will be at. Some people here will be at. Okay. So do we agree that this is a good thing to have for 15 or 20 minutes on the agenda, and we want to have a recap of where we are? Is that, yes, Karsten says +1. Good. So we have that, and right. So your focus will be a brief summary of where we are after the side meeting, and then spend most of the time on discussion with the working group.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Tahina. Thanks for spending the time joining us. What else do we need on our agenda for Madrid? Clearly wrapping up whatever issues still remain. And let's also, and what will we be focusing on in the hackathon? People who are doing CBOR stuff in the hackathon, what's the focus there? Karsten, you had some thoughts on hackathon?
Yeah, I would hope that we actually can validate what the late changes we are making on the 3 documents that were on the agenda today. So I think that that's an important thing that we should be able to report from at the Friday meeting.
Okay. So is there anything on the session agenda other than Martine, Tahina, and the discussion of remaining issues on these 3 documents?
I think that's the point where we will need time to get through some remaining issues.
Yes. So I'm just going to put that as discussion of remaining issues on the 3 active documents. And that's going to be remaining time. Okay, well, I'm hearing no other agenda items, so this will be good. We'll have about an hour to talk about the documents, and we're going to need that.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
I just heard someone say, "Can you hear me?" But you're very quiet.
This is Tahina. I just wanted to mention that I also proposed a hackathon for benchmarking my verified implementations of CBOR and CDDL parser generator.
Oh, good. So there should be a CBOR table at the hackathon, or a CBOR portion of a table. So you can join that.
Thank you. Because I added the hackathon description on the hackathon page, and I am going to send an email to a hackathon IETF, and I will advertise it to the mailing list as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right, Karsten, whatever time you have left, CDE. Karsten, I'm not hearing you.
We have 3 items we want to look at for CDE. One is this narrowing, widening issue, where I thought we had much more common understanding than it seems we do have. So we have to spend some time on interpreting 8949, and we also have to spend some time of understanding what our requirements are. So this is one point, and that's where I proposed more slides for, and I would ask people to actually look at the slides and continue on the mailing list. There's also a set of editorial misgivings that at some point we need to handle. And there is a little bit of a ground current that said, oh, actually, we should be doing something completely different. So let's start from square one and do ethnography of deterministic encoding mechanisms or serialization mechanisms. And I think we should find out whether we want to have this conversation and what to do about it. So these are the 3 things that I think we can discuss on the mailing list at some point. The NAN stuff is really arcane. I'm sorry about, but it's a corner that we have to work on. That's the problem with deterministic stuff. You really have to nail things down. So I apologize when there will be a lot of messages about this that very few people actually can relate to.
Could you show other slides?
Sure. Yeah, just as a reminder, NANs can have payloads. Much in the existing standards is implementation defined. We have a CBOR data model that treats the F16 as a subset of F32 and that as a subset, a strict subset of F64. And we have preferred serialization, which requires to define how we are going to handle narrowing and widening of these values. So that's the background. We essentially have to make sure this relation here holds true.
But we are really out of time.
Yes.
So let's take this to the list. And let's set the goal of getting this ready for wrapping up at the Madrid meeting as well.
Right. Can we have a hallway meeting for 5 minutes?
Sure. I'm not going to end this. I just have to drop off. So bye.
Thank you, Barry. Okay,
Will it be continued every even Wednesday to meet here?
Pardon me? Can you say that again?
The timetable for next meetings, next interims, every even Wednesday as it before?
Yes, but it only starts a while after the IETF 123. So I don't remember, but it's like late August. We are going to have the next interim. But that is all on the list. Okay, so there is text in 8949 that tries to define this. And I think we have different interpretations of this text. And I haven't actually managed to get to the ground of these different interpretations. But I want to point out the only requirement here really is that on the previous slide, that we have a narrow operation and a widen operation that either result in the same value again or just don't work because we don't know how to narrow something because information would be lost. So these are the equivalence relationships that are defined in 8949 that should inform these narrow and widen operations. One is actually stated for preferred serialization, and the other one is stated for key equivalence. Those two, of course, should better be compatible in some way, because if MAP equivalence doesn't work with preferred serialization, we have a problem. Okay, and I have to apologize because I thought we were much further in our common understanding, so I just wrote code to really nail down our common understanding, and that might have obvious that we do not yet have a common understanding. So sorry about that, and please disregard Appendix F. I think the interesting point, and I'm not going to try to paraphrase Joe here, you have to read his mail. There are some new abstract APIs, set payload, get payload. Those APIs do not exist in many programming environments yet. And it's possible to look at the whole thing from the point of view of those APIs, and then you might have come to a different conclusion than what I think 8949 says. Joe?
Yeah, so I think that this is a good summary of what I said. I think that C25 has a get payload function that is upcoming that nobody's implemented yet. But it's worth looking at. And the other thing that's important here is that the set payload and get payload thing was new in IEEE 754 2019, I think. And
yes.
So there was no, before this, it wasn't clear that NAND payloads had a semantic. They were just bits. Now that this is an IEEE 754, it changes the potential understanding of the bits that go in the NAN to make them have a semantic. And so it may have retroactively invalidated our understanding of NANs that we had when we did 8949.
Thank you. Okay, let's
And
see
so
if there's anything.
So I think that makes it makes it like it puts the text that's in 8949 in a precarious position. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. Yeah, so one question was, do we agree that 8949 says something? And if yes, is that a bug or a feature? And I think you just answered that question, or gave a potential answer for that question. That's what we have to do. Now, whatever we change, there's lots of running code that narrows NANs with 0 payloads to the single F16 value F97E00. So I think it's pretty clear that we do not want that to change. So we will have at least some preferred serialization staying in whatever we come up with in the DCP.
So I agree that is perhaps a configuration knob or a choice of implementers, and it's a completely valid choice. And in particular, if you're implementing CBOR, that's mandatory.
I'm not talking about requiring this. I'm talking about
yes.
that is what currently happens.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you, and I think that. So, for example, like I don't in my implementations, I don't really handle NAN payloads at all. Everything gets flushed to 0. I'm in the midst of changing that, and that's where all of this came from. As I was chasing down what's the right thing to do for this, because I was trying to implement it, and I feel like anybody else who got to this point, who like actually read 754 2019, would come to a similar set of conclusions of, oh, oops, we've got a problem here. And so I think that the people that don't flush all their NAN payloads to 0 probably haven't done the thing that you suggested in draft 16 or 12.
Okay.
The last CD you just published was.
Do your APIs allow you to access these NAN payloads, for example, to use them for packed?
Say the first part of your question again, Vadim.
It's about those packed idea. Do your APIs allow you to access not a number payloads?
So mine will once I land this patch. And doing it in a language that allows you to overlay memory of an integer and a float in whatever mechanism. So whether you mem copy it or whether you have a union or whatever is usually pretty straightforward. It's a simple matter of some bit masking with the understanding that is sort of, I think it's alluded to in 754 2019. Or it was somewhere else. Maybe it was maybe it's in the Wikipedia article for one of these. The understanding that floats and integers usually have the same byte ordering on almost all computers that we know about. If they don't, if your floats are big Indian and your ints are little Indian, it's a pain. But if you assume that almost all processors use the same Indianness for floats and integers, then it's not that much code.
Okay, so we all have to look into C25 and what it is likely to actually do in this space. So just my last slide, we have to do this technical work. We have to look at the editorial stuff. We have to look at the procedural question, whether we even want to have a BCP for CD. And I think we can get some further progress on this at the IETF Friday. thank you for staying on for 10 more minutes.
This is not the same as for EDN. For example, EDN could support both left sticky and right sticky. Yeah, or not?
Theoretically, but I'd really rather us figure out what the CDE approach for NANDs is and just support that.
Okay, so again, thank you for staying on, and see you in Madrid physically or virtually, and at the hackathon in particular to get some of this implemented. Bye-bye.
Bye.